Okay, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John. I'm joined again by my good pal Eddie. How you doing, buddy?
70th time.
Number 70. I feel like, we're getting kind of close to the 100 mark. We're 30 away now, which isn't that close, but it felt like we hit 50 and we're like, yes, we're going to be at 100 in no time. And now it's been kind of...
Yeah, but we've been on a regular pace. Yeah. We're here. We're doing our thing. Pretty soon we'll have it mastered.
I'd say we're about 16% there.
Okay. Fair enough.
Well, we've got a good show. We're going to talk about this new Pro Players Association that was formed outside the UPA, I should say. MLP Dallas, I don't know if you saw any of those games, but man, some great games in there. Paddles of the Week, talking about some good ones this week, as always. And then we got some deep dive. I'm going to address the topic of whether or not adding weight to a paddle in terms of perimeter weighting increases power or not.
Seems pretty obvious, but I'm sure there's some nuance that we're not catching on to. At least.
Yeah, and some anti-intuitive data also. Kew A, and then finally, we'll wrap it up.
Any new polls this week?
No, but sign up for the newsletter if you're not already. Eddie's been contributing with some awesome motivational stuff and just the world of Eddie. It's great.
It's a weird. You got to be really quirky to enjoy it.
The last one I really enjoyed. It was your son got a really cool photograph of a lightning bolt.
Just right through an airplane.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It was nuts, and you just kind of went off on, be the lightning. So you'll have to join the newsletter to figure out that.
It's actually a lot of fun writing those. I got a couple more coming.
Okay, good, because that was the third installment of Around the Post with Eddie. I was going to call it Eddie's Corner, but then I realized I'm stealing from Pickleball Effect because there is Kyle's Corner. And
there's probably an ATP out there somewhere too, but
not that I know of, so I feel better at least.
Returning the lob with Eddie just doesn't seem
right.
It's catchy.
Well, it is a weekly thing now. I mean, some weeks we might skip one, but it's a very regular thing. I have a newsletter editor on board now, so I think it's important to have this regular outlet.
Yeah, and you've got a poll embedded in the newsletter as well. That's kind of cool.
The new newsletter has a poll in there in terms of how long does your paddle typically last before you buy a new one. And this week, there's something exclusive to the newsletter that we're not covering on the pod. So, what does a paddle breaking look like, and what are the categories of breakage?
That was a nice article.
Yeah.
Lots of close-ups.
Yeah, plenty of close-ups because I love my microscope. All right, shall we jump in?
Let's do this.
Okay, so there is a new Pro Players Association that has been formed. The news broke last week on ESPN and Sports Business Journal, so some big ones. Forbes also read an article recently. The Dink did a great summary of it. But basically, it's a formal association of pro players that is not the committee, the Pro Player Committee on the UPA. So this is called the World Pickleball Players Association, so WPPA. So we all love our acronyms and abbreviations. And from their website, it is a player-led organization formed to strengthen our sport through unity, professionalism, and collaboration. So basically, they'll be focusing on advocating for increased transparency around the health, safety, compensation, and more.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right. That was the last one, but I have a feeling it should have been mentioned first. So pro players are advocating for themselves. And by the way, this is not a union because pro players are technically contractors to the PPA. So they're not employers of the PPA or UPA, right? So something about the technicalities of being a contractor means you can't form a union, but this basically serves the same purposes. It's looking out for the best interests of the pro players.
But clearly there's a body of professionals out there who feel that the player committee within the UPA is not representing them sufficiently.
Yeah, that's the crux of the issue, right? Why did it form? Because that's also the purpose of the player committee at the UPA. So the WPPA's board members are Tina Pisnick as the president, Deckel Barr as the treasurer, Jesse Irvine as the secretary, Colin Johns, Jay DeVilliers, and Gabe Tardio all as board members. So there's 6 people. Augie Go was mentioned, but I think the Dink reached out to him, and he's no longer in this. But right now it's those 6 folks, which is interesting. That's a list of people that were seemingly very loyal to the PPA. When we think about, the turf wars back when MLP and PPA were fighting over the players, none of those people went over to MLP. They were, true to the PPA, So interesting that they all are kind of splitting off now, not necessarily splitting off, but advocating through a different means outside of the UPA.
Is there a particular name in there that stands out more than the others?
Well, I mean, Colin Johns for sure is a big one, and Deckel's always been, a company man for the PPA. Never said a bad word as far as I know about the PPA, and. How about you?
Gabe Tardio really stands out to me as kind of the young gun, clearly an up-and-comer in the world of the UPA, and as such, probably pretty well compensated.
Oh, yeah, we know that he has. He
Right.
just re-signed and got a pretty massive 3-year contract.
Right, so there's some backstory there that we're not privy to.
Exactly. Some stuff going on behind the scenes that none of us know about. So I'll quote Colin Johns here to give a little bit more insight into the actual purpose of the organization. He says, the formation of an official player association marks an important step in the natural evolution of a newly established professional sport. Our priority is to protect player interests and provide a unified, independent voice. We look forward to working collaboratively with tour leadership wherever possible, with the shared goal of building long-term success and stability for the sport and its athletes. Yeah, so more along that theme of advocating for pro players, but also that was very much like let's work together on this, but we also want to have the independence, the separation from the UPA and the PPA to look after our own best
That's
interests.
the word I underscored in all that was independent, because the Players Advisory Committee under the UPA is kind of bound by them. I'm certain guided by management within the UPA, so independence is really kind of what screams out to me.
Yep, for sure. And last week we also saw the UPA re-announce its established player council called the UPA Pro Player Committee, which in theory, like we said, has the same goals as the WPPA. And this Pro Player Committee, according to last week's newsletter, is Zane Evertill as president, Roscoe Bellamy, Brooke Buckner, Georgia Johnson, Elise Jones, Eric Onsens, Catherine Parento, and Fed Stockstrud, a couple more, Annalie Waters, and Matt Wright. So 10 folks on that. Notably absent from both of these is Ben Johns. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wasn't he on the UPA council last year? Or maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe it's smart just to stay out of the fray here for him, But it's good that I feel like. What are your thoughts, Eddie? I'm going to throw this over to you. What are your thoughts on the new organization? Do you think it's a good idea?
I always think third-party independence is a great idea. It's hard to know how much this pro player committee, how much their voice is going to be heard, how much they're going to be able to, among themselves, be able to elevate issues to the UPA. So yeah, independence with no fear of retribution within contracts or anything like that, I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
We still may see some of that retribution, who knows? But
right.
A body outside looking in, I think, is good.
For sure. I totally agree. There needs to be some independence. It just feels more right to me to have this separated from the UPAA, and that's not casting shade on any of these pros, including Zane as president. I mean, it was great to have this group of people originally, but we'll see where it all shakes out and whether or not it's possible to maintain both groups and whether or not they can both be useful. But other things being equal, I feel like an independent group committee is much preferable and would advocate better for players' interests.
And what are your thoughts on Ben's absence? Does he have just too much to lose and really not much to gain?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so Colin's in the WPPA now, right? And they talk. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Ben is on the same page as Colin. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes, like you said, because Gabe Tardio is in the WPPA and he just re-signed, and all the people in the WPPA are kind of loyalists to the PPA, you know. So I think there's a lot we're not seeing going on behind the scenes. I mean, we all know that all the contracts are being renegotiated, right? That's been big news lately. It does seem that most people's contracts were maybe inflated, not most people's, but some were maybe inflated, and it wasn't a great system to incentivize competitive play when you're getting a monthly paycheck and it's not contingent on your performance, right? So it did feel like it needed to be reorganized, but who knows what's going on behind the scenes in those renegotiations that we're not seeing, and that pro players feel like, you know, they're set upon to meet standards they shouldn't, or it's unfair to them. So,
you know, I've worked in a lot of big organizations where we've had employee advisory groups, but we've also had collective bargaining agreements with local unions. And I can tell you, management spends a lot more time discussing those things and negotiating those things with the unions than they do with the employee advisory groups, because they can just simply direct the employee advisory groups to pay attention to something or not pay attention to something. Whereas with unions, they don't have that gravitas to be able to direct those conversations.
100%. Well said, Eddie. One last thing on here, that without naming names in the latest UPA statement, they did make it clear that they don't recognize the WPPA as an official authority. They said the UPA confirms that this committee, the UPA, is the only formally acknowledged and authorized voice of its athlete base. So there we are. I'm done with that.
Wow. Okay.
Did you want to talk? No. For today.
Okay.
Got anything else, Eddie?
No. Great segue, John.
And I'm done. Do you ever watch Gerald Undone? He's a photography gear content creator, reviewer, and that's his ending for every video. He's like,
Next.
I'm done. It's like out of the blue. All right. MLP Dallas. Holy cow, was that. So to preface this, I've never been a huge MLP fan. I've always liked the traditional tournament atmosphere and format of the PPA. I like the idea of the MLP. I've always found it tedious and difficult to follow who's on which team and why those teams
That's a major problem.
Yeah. But, man, this last MLP in Dallas was just, the level of play was insane. And I saw probably the best pickleball competition athleticism I've ever seen before. I mean, it's naturally bound to happen as players get better and better, but something about that team format also, I think, lights fire under people. It was good to see different teammates go up against different opponents. Just insane. Did you get to watch anything?
Well, just coming into that, you had the whole thing with QD and Ben Johns moving, and just to see how all that was going to play out was really interesting. And it played out in the kind of the way you thought it would, in the most dramatic way possible.
Right. Did you have any standout matches?
No, not really. I just was enjoying the kind of in the background, working on some other things, but just the energy of the teams, and the crowd too was really engaged.
Yeah, huge crowd. So the match everybody was talking about was the Mad Drops, who just traded Ben Johns. So he's on the Mad Drops now versus the New Jersey Fives. So that's Annalie Waters' team, basically, right? And it was Ben's first performance after the trade. And you definitely saw Ben trying harder. You know, he seemed more invested in this. And, you know, I think he needed to be, first of all, because, you know, it's one thing to lose with the Carolina, the Hogs. You know, that the level of his teammates wasn't as high as the level with the Mad Drops. So if you were to lose at the same amount with the Mad Drops, it would say something about his performance, right? So he had to pick up his game. You know, I think so. I watched a little bit of Pickleball Effect, and Kyle was actually commenting. He had some good observations here, and he's like, I kind of don't like it that Ben's trying so much harder now that he's with the Mad Drops versus with the Hogs, because, you know, he should, as a leader of the team for the Hogs, bring everybody's level up. But instead, you know, you get a lot of eye rolls and shoulder slumps, and I think it's a good observation. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's true that if they're professional athletes, they ought to act and behave like one, but they're human too. And I get that everything surrounding all of this just place such a heavy burden on people, and it shows they're human. Yeah. I get it. I see both sides, actually.
Yeah. I'm not coming down on Ben if, he is human, like you said. And also, if any of us were in the same situation, we'd never know exactly how. Like some of my most embarrassing behavior, I feel like, has been on a pickleball court. And it's never been outrageous, but just like I get upset about things I shouldn't be upset about, mostly about myself. And then if I ever watch video or something of me when I in a bad mood on the pickleball court, I'm like, man, what a jerk. Who is this guy?
It's easy to point fingers, John. I mean, take your own private life, for example. You've been treated poorly at work, I'm sure, at some point, as have I, and you don't always bring your best self in those conditions. Right. It's really difficult to achieve the highest level of professionalism in trying circumstances.
In your 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
Every weekend for 50-something tournaments a year.
100%.
All right. So anyway, performance was great on both sides. There was so many storylines. So it was Ben facing off against Anna Lee at some point, and Anna Lee also facing off against Catherine Parento, her old partner. And what it ended in was a Dream Breaker. It went to Dream Breaker. They both won 2. They went to Dream Breaker, and it went to 22-20 in the Dream Breaker, and the winner was the fives. And man, so like you said, the crowd was so much more invested. On the last point, it ended with Catherine and Anna Lee up against each other. And I think Anna Lee went 7 points to Catherine's 1 point. Like, she completely dominated. By the way, Anna Lee is on such a tear in MLP. She's pickling people right and left and just can't seem to lose. And her level of play is insane. But it was 21-20, and I think Catherine was up to serve, and the crowd just went in an uproar like you've never heard in pickleball before. Like, we have some decent crowds, nothing like Wimbledon or tennis or anything like this, but this actually sounded like an uproarious, loud, definitely excited crowd. You could feel the energy, but also just like a big crowd cheering. It's something I never heard in pickleball before.
Well, it's what everybody wants, right? The top men's player, top women's player, these backstories, the drama of partners and exes getting together. I mean, it's kind of the perfect storm for just building excitement and drama.
Yeah. So that was exciting. So I do have, besides that match, if you want to watch one match from MLP Dallas, that's probably the one. If you want to watch one game, however, my vote for probably the best game I've ever seen in terms of just insanity, like the points lasting forever, the skill of play, the athleticism of the athletes, was Shock versus the Mad Drops in women's doubles. And this was Anna Bright and Kate Fahey for the Shock versus Catherine and Jade Kawamoto for the Mad Drops. That I've never seen. I've never seen people scramble so much for balls and points go on for like 50 shots, all of which are just like incredible saves, vicious putaways that were returned, and it was just go watch that game if you want to just be shocked. And I was talking to Michelle, my wife, and I was like, remember when we started pickleball? This was back in like 2020, and this was, I remember like getting into pickleball, playing with friends, and then wondering what the professional league looked like in pickleball. And I went and watched, and at that time I saw like 4 matches, and like 3 of them, Ben Johns was in there. I was like, okay, he must be the best player. But watching them at the time, I was like, they don't really look that good.
They're not that much better.
I was totally ignorant. I didn't know what drops were or anything. I was just like, why are they just like dinking it to each other? Why don't they just hit the ball hard? So most of that was on me. But I think we've crossed a milestone where anybody who knows nothing about pickleball can watch that match and be like, "Phew, those people are really good at this game."
I think that gets brought out at that level even more with women's doubles than with men for some reason. When I watch like women's doubles, I'm just sucked in because of all the different aspects of the game that they bring to a point. Yeah. The men can get a little bit one or two dimensional. The women just bring it all the time.
They don't care, especially like Anna Bright and Kate Fahey. They go for it every time. And all four of those amazing players. It was just a pleasure to watch. So yeah, good stuff.
All right.
All right, Eddie, let's move on. We got a few paddles to cover this week for our Paddles of the Week segment.
How do they keep on coming?
It's been an epic month. This month of July, and I think early August it's not gonna slow down yet, but they can't keep up this pace because can you name one paddle that was released in July that was just terrible?
No. In fact, most of them were some of the best paddles of that particular company's history.
Yeah.
Some of the best paddles in pickleball ever.
Yeah.
I mean, what a tear we've been on.
Yeah.
So lucky to
pretty
be
incredible.
Content creators.
Well, let's jump into the Selkirk Boomstik. Now we can't talk in any detail about these, so you're not getting swing weights or any kind of technology
without numbers on them.
No, boy, that's right. Good call. So we got now there are only two shapes, which is the elongated and the wide body. And so, man, it's hard to talk when you're not getting technical, especially for me. I just want to go straight into this.
It's like every day in the office for me.
Straight into the build. You can see these shiny things. Aren't they pretty?
Yeah. What are they, John?
I'm not saying.
Okay.
You can probably figure it out. Well, let's just jump straight into how they play. Just our initial impressions on how they play. And by the way, all the paddles we're talking about today, we're going to wrap it up at the end of the segment with our ranking of firepower and our ranking of feel and forgiveness.
Okay.
Top to bottom. All right. Eddie, let's hear your impression of it.
So I think Selkirk Labs has outdone itself. I thought at one time the SLK era was the best paddle that Selkirk had ever produced.
Like last month.
Last week.
Right.
I now think it's this paddle. It's very impressive. The noteworthy feature for me is the pop of the paddle. The era was poppy. This is very poppy. You have to be very cautious with dinks and with resets. But if you can adjust to that, the drives on this paddle are just disgusting. I mean, they're the nicest possible way. They're very good. But again, this paddle is very sensitive for blocks and soft game maneuvers.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody heard me kind of after I went to the Selkirk event, this was the one before last week, where other people were invited to do a similar tour of the factories, get introduced to. So I did play with these back then, and this is what I was talking about when I was like, okay, I think Selkirk will definitely, end up proving some of the haters wrong. And, I probably would be considered one of the haters, a few months ago. Not a hater, but I was just, I think objectively we can say Selkirk had fallen behind, and especially in performance paddles, right? This is a top-tier performing paddle by any standard, by July 2025 standards, which is a high bar until August or September rolls around. But no, I think these and all the others we're talking about in terms of the best of July will be sticking around and influencing all the subsequent paddles that come. So, yeah, man, I have such a hard time talking about paddles and not getting into the weeds. This is driving me a little bit crazy that I can't talk about the technology, but 100% definitely a top-tier elite power paddle. Spins great. The sound is very loud. Boomstik is a very appropriate name.
Yeah, I not having played with it, I thought the boom might have been referring to the power, which it has. It would be appropriate, but I think the boom is more for the sound.
Yeah, which is kind of gratifying. It's a deeper thuddy sound too. Get a Gen 3 Ford style.
Deep and hollow.
Yep.
Yeah,
but loud.
I would say it's maybe the loudest paddle ever produced.
Probably. We were hitting with it yesterday, and it was just like, man, everybody was turning around and looking. A couple of people came up and like, what are those paddles you're hitting with? So, yeah.
Those things on the side, whatever they are, the paddle has a very nice sweet spot.
Yeah, good sweet spot. And if you're familiar with the new shapes from the SOK era, these are the same shapes, which I approve of. I think they nailed it in terms of the dimensions, the aesthetics, So Good
How did you
stuff.
feel about the pop and kind of those softer shots?
Yeah, that definitely heavy on the pop end of the power pop spectrum. But overall, I'd say firepower levels are way up there. You know, I keep wanting to say stuff, but I don't know if I can, so I will end it there. I'll give these back to you.
They're good looking paddles too.
Yeah. I was about to say something else that I can't say. Let's move on before I have an aneurysm here. All right, Franklin. Paris Todd has a new signature model out. They actually come in two colorways. The violet and the pink/blue. Is this the pink/blue? What color is the handle?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the other color?
Violet.
Isn't that purple?
Yeah. I have it out there. We can run and grab it. But both of them.
That's pink and blue. Yep.
Yeah. I did put some of the Franklin tungsten tape on the edges to test it out. I think it definitely plays better. It ruins a little bit of the aesthetics, though, so I would actually recommend that automotive clear tape around the whole head. I don't know how much that stuff weighs, but after you wrap the whole
Well, I
head...
got an article coming out about that.
Do you?
With
Excellent.
weights and everything. Okay.
Subscribe to the newsletter. All right. But yeah, good-looking paddle for sure. I can give... So the launch is around the 15th of August on this. I didn't get the price. If it's the same as the other C45s, then it'll also be $230. This might maybe be a little bit more, but Franklin's always been very, very good about their pricing, and not really gouging anybody, So $230 is what all the C45s sell for before code, so you can bump that down 10%. Static weight on this is very, very low, 7.5 ounces. Swing weight stock is at 109. Twist weight was 5.43, so very, very lightweight and maneuverable stock. However, with that low twist weight, it definitely needs some tungsten. I hit around with it in the garage day before yesterday, and I was just like, nope, I'm going to need some perimeter weight. So you tried it out yesterday with the perimeter weighting. Thickness this is their thinnest of the C45 line at 13.25 millimeters, and the shape is a blend between their hybrid shape and the elongated Dynasty. And yeah, they worked apparently directly with Paris Todd to come up with the shape and the thickness and everything else. Otherwise, the guts of it are C45, same as the other paddles.
Definitely feels like it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on how it played?
Yeah, very familiar with the C45. I've played with their elongated shape for quite some time, and it has a lot of the same vibes, same feel. I would say that, like those other Franklins, this one does a lot of things well. Does everything well. Doesn't do anything exceptionally. It's not a very, it's definitely not a top-tier power paddle. It's probably low on that scale, maybe even tipping down into high all-court as far as where we are today with paddles. But again, it does a lot of things well. I would say that if you kind of like those other Franklin C45s, but the shapes don't work for you, or if you just prefer a jazzier color, it's a great option.
Yeah, I think the looks of them are going to win a lot of people over alone. I think, yeah, you summed it up just fine. I'd put it feel-wise closer to the hybrid shape than the Dynasty, definitely because of the super lightweightness of it and the thinness of it. But yeah, it shares all the same qualities as the other C45s. Very predictable, definitely some of the stiffer, I'd say, of the Gen 3 paddles, although you get that pretty good dwell time with it as well. The texture on this of the peel ply is on the modest side, but and the spin on these has never been like super top tier, but we're talking 100 RPM difference between this and the super top tier, so adequate spin. Yeah, I think it's a good paddle. I don't have a great sense of it just yet. I'm still in a boot, although I'm weight bearing now. I can actually move around the court on my own 2 feet.
Yeah, you did pretty good yesterday.
And so I'll need more time with it to really dial in my impression. But yeah, I think another solid offering, especially if you like pop. This is the poppiest of the C45s for sure.
I could see that.
Yeah.
What I love about is it the Dynasty that's the elongated, is the location of the sweet spot. On that paddle, I almost nearly always hit the, right where the sweet spot is, kind of on the upper end of the face. Here, the sweet spot, I would say, is more in the middle of the face. Okay. So it doesn't completely suit my ball striking style,
Yep.
but that doesn't mean it wouldn't work for somebody else.
And that might be my tungsten tape placement as well. This is pretty beefy tungsten tape that Franklin makes.
Very thick.
Yeah, it might even be more than 1 gram per ounce. But
Per inch.
yeah, 1 gram per inch. But yeah, I put it down at the neck and going up to the top. Maybe some weight up top as well, or more distributed across the paddle face would raise that sweet spot a bit. But yeah, anything else you want to say about this one?
Nope.
Cool.
Moving on.
So this one was, I wasn't expecting much, to be honest. I mean,
Not much to look at.
yeah. Eddie loves the gradient colorways. Although I do like a little bit different. I like how they're black on just the corners on the side. You love it now. And there's 2 colorways too. There's this black and white, and then there's what else do they have? I forget, but I think it's pink. So instead of the white, you get pink. Anyway, Thrive's been consistently solid paddles, nothing hugely stand out, since they're Azul, is a pretty popular paddle. But I was talking with the owner. He's like, I have this paddle that I absolutely love. I'm going to send it your way. And I was like, great. And, he told me kind of the specs of it and construction. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And you and I hit with it yesterday. First, let me go through the price and everything. I think it just went up for pre-sale today or yesterday, $200 retail, and you can get 10% off with code. Swing weight on this is only 113, so it's a hybrid shape, so pretty low, on the low end of the hybrid shapes. I measured this at 16.2 inches long by 7.8 inches wide, so closer to that vapor style of hybrid, closer to the wide body than the elongated, just a little bit. 16 mil, they call it 15.5 mil, but that's the same thing. And PB Core, they've advertised their PB Core score that they got from USAP on this, which was 0.433, which is basically as high as you can get without it being illegal. We'll talk about that. I don't feel like it hits that hard, but it hits hard. I'd call it a power paddle. We'll get into the details in a minute. I also Q-Cord tested it. Mine came in at 0.40, which on my scale is slightly different than USAP's. That puts it right in the middle of the power category, which I feel like that suits it pretty well. Let's jump into the X-ray here, Eddie. You haven't seen this yet. I just got this X-ray this morning, and after talking with Scott, he told me that there's some internal weighting, but he didn't tell me exactly what was going on. I figured there was a foam ring. I figured it was Gen 3 foam enhanced, but now we see what's going on. So it's got the horseshoe perimeter of foam and the diving board polypropylene, similar to the Yola 4s, and also similar to the Yola 4s, that intrusive foam down here in the neck region. What do they call that on the TFP technology, right? Mm-hmm. But you can also see those strips of bright glowing objects in the foam inserts in the neck, which are clearly the internal perimeter weighting that they were referring to. I imagine that's little lead strips or who knows what, but something high density in there. So it's kind of, very similar to the Yola Pro 4s, I'd say, but in a hybrid shape, which Yola doesn't have, and some boosted internal perimeter weighting. Interestingly,
it looks like the honeycomb goes edge to edge with that horseshoe foam sort of either embedded within those cells or overlaying those cells. So you've got a little bit of a combination of materials around that perimeter.
So what that is, Eddie, is when you can also see shadows of the honeycomb cells in the Yolas, even though they're not there. And what that is the way it's manufactured is they carve out the polypropylene once the facing layers are attached, so it leaves little remnants of the
I had no
scars.
idea.
Yeah, so it's not actually polypropylene cells. They're gone, but their ghosts remain.
That seems like a very overly complicated way to create that channel.
Yeah. There's probably a reason for it, because it doesn't seem like the most efficient way.
Right.
So,
well, thank you for correcting me.
Well, you might be correct. We'll see once I x-ray it. But let's jump into our impressions on the court. Like I said, I'll preface this with, was going in not expecting much, maybe, another solid performing paddle. But immediately I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this a lot. And we were hitting together with the Boomstiks and some other good paddles yesterday. And the more I hit with it yesterday, the more I was like, man, I'm digging this. Like, it felt like the ball went where I wanted to. There wasn't a noticeable launch angle, high or low. It was just kind of right where I wanted it to be. Great spin. I put the power right in the mid-tier of the power category, similar to like the Holbrook Armas or we'll talk about its relationship. Let's throw the Gearbox GX2 Power in with our power rankings here in a little bit. But I'd say it's close to that, just a little bit below that. Big sweet spot.
Yeah.
Nothing to complain about from me. And this is also a very loud, aggressive paddle. When you hit the ball, it gives a smack. Not quite as loud as the Boomstik.
More
but
dense, right?
Denser.
Yeah.
But also very aggressively loud. What do you think, Eddie?
So almost word for word, John, I never played with a Thrive that just floored me or that I even would like pick out for a tournament.
Yeah.
Yesterday kind of changed all that because this paddle is really outstanding. It's so good. It's so intuitive in so many ways. It took me a long time to miss a shot drilling with you yesterday.
you got like 10 resets in a row.
And then driving the ball, it's just so automatic. Mm-hmm. And it gives you confidence to do things that you wouldn't normally do in a pressure situation or in a game that you might be thinking about trying someday. This is the paddle to try those things with. Yesterday, in some of my singles matches, I was doing a backhand roll that I don't normally have a lot of confidence in, but I was doing so well with other shots with this paddle. I'm like, I'm just gonna go for it. And I mean, the execution was spot on.
Yeah, there's some crazy singles points I was watching.
Yeah, I mean, everything from dinks to drives was very don't have to think about it. No adjustment. No oh, this is a different paddle. I got to do something a little bit different with it. Right. Just right out of the box. Mm-hmm. Suited me very nicely. I agree. It's not top tier paddle. Middle of the road somewhere.
Power, you mean?
So, yeah. Power, pop as well. But there's plenty in there when you need it. And it's so easy to get to. And with that sweet spot, it just makes execution very easy.
Yeah. I think it's a good point that one of the key aspects of a really good paddle is when you can play with it and not think about it. Because it does, your paddle shouldn't be in your head when you're playing.
Right.
But another aspect of this that I really loved is kind of it just feels good to hit the ball with it. There's a pleasant feel, good sound. It's got the deep Gen 3 thud going for it. It's loud. That loud sound adds to its aggressive feel for sure, both on the player side and on the opponent's side. You hear that loud crack of this paddle. If you're an opponent, you're like, oh, I'm sure it gets in your head. But yeah, I think the overall feel of this paddle is great. And I don't even know if I'd want to add any perimeter weighting. It feels really well weighted. I'm not seeing any additional lateral weighting, but that lead in the hand and the neck region. The sweet spot on this, I don't feel like it's lacking at all. I'd call it generous.
Yeah.
Would you add any weight to it? I mean, I'd experiment with weight, but
I would throw some on just to see what that would do in terms of expanding that sweet spot. But hard to believe that it could get any better.
I mean, honestly, it's a good paddle. So yeah, well done, Thrive. I think I was pleasantly surprised, and I'll keep hitting with this and getting more. More impressions. I was almost just like, really? Another fantastic paddle? I mean, we're going to sound like a bunch of shills here on the podcast. Every paddle that comes our way is just amazing. But yeah, I'm not going to, deny this is a great paddle.
I think a couple times in the last couple of weeks, John, I've said, thanks for the paddle. You're not getting this one back. Might be another one.
There's two of them. The last one was that GX2 Power, which I had to hit up Rafa from Gearbox to get another because I got to review that one. But yeah, I knew that you weren't giving that one back. I would say my only concern with this and any other Gen 3 paddle is whether or not there's any core crushing or what's the durability look like, because these type of constructions don't have the greatest track record for durability. The YOLA 4s are breaking more than we want them to, and from core crushing. Mine was core crushed. I talked to who's a Keaton to get. He plays with Yola Pro 4s. He's saying he has to switch, and he's like the 5.0 level player. He switches about every 3 to 4 weeks. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, the feel becomes too different for me, and I can't get the touch I need. Sometimes they're too powerful. Sometimes it's dead spots. So he may be extra sensitive, but regardless, this type of construction you had to be careful with. I'd say that of the more durable ones, Franklin C45 is definitely near the top of that. So, we'll dissect one of these, see if there is any core crushing. That's the obvious sign. But even with the absence of core crushing, like the Pro 4s, we haven't seen any compressed cores out of the factory, but they're still breaking. So it might be an issue with the density of the polypropylene. But yeah, that's something to look out for. And that has to be proven for this paddle. But right now, out of the box, they play great.
Any negatives for you?
Just just the unknown potential negative of durability. I can't say that it's not durable yet or durable, so we'll find out.
All right.
How about you?
I got nothing.
No cons? Okay.
Yeah, I talk about branding and looks, but people seem to hate it when I do that, so I'm not going to do it.
Right. I mean, I think it's
an average-looking paddle, we'll put it that way.
What do we got next, Eddie?
We got the Ronbus
Refoam. Okay. And these just kind of showed up out of nowhere. It was a surprise to me. They just released the newer iteration of the Ripple, and I wasn't expecting anything so quick after that. And at first I was confused. I was like, this is supposed to replace the Ripple. So I asked Dong, the owner, for clarification on what he wants out of these, and he said the Ripple is their elite power paddle, elite tier power. The Refoams are going to be their transitional all-court / lower tier power. And then they've got another all-court paddle coming out with a little less power than this. And from our hitting of this yesterday, I'd say that it fits that mold quite well as a upper tier all-court or lower tier power paddle. Let's talk about some specs, and then we'll get into how they play. So they're priced right now. I just got onto the Ronbus website, and they are for sale now. I don't know if that's a pre-sale, if they're shipping later, but it's $180, so significantly cheaper than the Ripples. They are full foam, so Ronbus's first full foam paddle. The Ripple was all foam also, but it had the carbon fiber ribs, so it's kind of a carbon fiber core is what I call it. But this one is full foam, featuring MPP, which is microcellular polypropylene. So most of the other full foam paddles we see today are expanded polypropylene. This one, microcellular. And
which means what?
Good question. So it says it's a supercritical foaming technology created at the micro level to form cell structures that enhance the rebounding and strength to weight ratios. Sounds like I won't be mean, but does not sound like a paddle reviewer generated statement, but more like a paddle manufacturer generated statement. But basically, very small cells in the foam versus the larger cells of the expanded polypropylene. What I'm unclear on is whether or not these are open cell or closed cell on these, but I will eventually find out through either dissection or other means. So they also have these 3D carbon fiber lattice in this, and they're instead of wrapping around the edges, there are segments, which let's look at the x-ray right now and you can actually see them. Ronbus loves these lattices, these 3D carbon fiber lattices, but you can see these 6 rectangular patches around the perimeter of the core, which are presumably, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these are the 3D lattice segments, meaning those carbon fiber strips, formed in a grid pattern, like they're putting on, the Ronbus Ripple and the Pulsar FX before that.
And they're there for what? Structural reasons? Weight?
Unclear. I would imagine certainly the weight contributes to some performance perks.
It's hard to believe that it'd be structural, given kind of the layout and where they are.
Yeah, I don't know. But you can see that there's the center of the paddle is just kind of an empty void, which is that all foam core. And there is edge foam you can see that extends down into the handle, and looks like that MPP foam also continues down the center of the paddle. All right. Did I give you swing weights and stuff yet?
You did not?
Okay, so the R4 shape, which I'm holding here, comes in pretty low stock weight, static weight at 7.7 ounces, 114 swing weight, and 6.1 twist weight. The R1 shape, they're elongated, comes in at the same static weight, 7.7 ounces, slightly higher swing weight, 115, which is very low for a elongated paddle, and 6.0 twist weight for this. Both of these are 14 millimeter, just like the Ripples. So lightweight paddles. However, the twist weight is not too shabby for their shapes. So
Looks like there's some internal weighting going on that might contribute to that.
yeah, maybe that lattice system is enhancing the twist weight as well. Oh, you're right. If you look in the very, very edge perimeter along the edge guard, looks like they've added some stuff inside the edge guard.
A good amount, too. Maybe 3 inches per side.
Yeah, the length. It's
Yep.
very thin, but yeah, maybe, I don't know, fiberglass strips, maybe even lead strips. I don't know, but it looks too thin for lead. But yeah, that's probably how they got the twist weights up on such a lightweight paddle. Eddie, what do you think about their play style?
I would say they're somewhat stiff, surprisingly so for what I thought they were going to be, being all foam, but not jarringly so. We'll call it firm. But again, not jarring, very kind of stable and dense.
Yeah.
Mid-tier power and pop, nothing crazy. I would say if that was their objective, they met that very well. It's not going to get even close to PB Core Max. So I think that is a really good strategy, and they're executing to that strategy quite well. Of the two shapes, definitely the wider one, the R4,
yeah.
was to my liking. This other elongated shape felt like it had a bit of twist in it. The R4 seemed to mitigate that a little bit more, and that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
You thought that originally that these were really stiff, but did your opinion sort of evolve over time?
Yeah, it's funny. I'd never been so schizophrenic in my impression of a paddle. So 2 days ago, I took them out into the garage and speed tested them with a bunch of other paddles, and they just felt stiff. It felt like fiberglass to me, like fiberglass on the surface of the paddle, and maybe like a stiffer honeycomb polypropylene core. And I was like, man, I'm not digging the response of these, And I told you that yesterday when we went out and played with them. And yesterday they played very differently than what I remembered the day before. And I'd still call them on the stiffer side for if you're comparing them to other all foam paddles, definitely on the stiffer side. What would I compare the stiffness to? Not as stiff as the Vatic V cores were, but somewhere close to the upper end of that. And not as stiff as, a classic Gen 2 thermoform paddle. Let's say the bread and butter filth. That's these days that's a pretty stiff paddle. 2 years ago, that was kind of the standard. Now, these I'd call a little softer than that. But you're totally right. I got the same dense impression. It doesn't have the hollow feel of some all foam paddles. But I didn't mind it yesterday. I thought they actually played really well. I wouldn't say that I liked them as much as, the Thrive, or the Selkirk Boomstik. But yeah, I think I can see the spot. I can see where Dong was going with this in terms of the Ronbus lineup. If you like to feel connected to the ball when you hit it, I feel like this is a good option. It's priced reasonably. I'd put the Firepower low tier power, meaning power paddle, but lower in that category. Speed spots felt decent. What I do need to do is add some perimeter weighting. And I think what perimeter weighting would do to these, given that they both have very light swing weights, you got a lot of maneuverability, or a lot of options for perimeter weighting. Adding some perimeter weighting to this, I think that's going to mellow out those kind of harsher vibrations and make it feel stiff and make it feel a little plusher, and probably enhance the sweet spot. Definitely fix the twisting on the elongated. I agree with you. The R4 is the superior shape in my opinion. But I feel like we'll see. Maybe perimeter weighting will transform them into something more exceptional.
I think you're right. A little bit more plushness in the feel to match the power output of the paddle would be a nice compromise.
Yeah. But, I'm not mad at these by any means, like I was 2 days ago.
Don't be mad, John.
Yesterday, I kind of enjoyed playing with them.
Did you leave them in the sun?
Not yet. I will.
Okay.
It's supposed to be like 100 and something degrees next week, so we will test
good.
them. All right. Let's rank these by power. So again, we played with all these paddles yesterday. We lined them up on the fence, left to right from least to most power, and again, left to right from least to most feel and forgiveness. Let's throw in also the Gearbox GX2 Power in these, just as another anchor we can throw in. All right, Eddie, you go first. Least to most power.
I'm going to start my list with the Franklin C45.
Okay. And so this had the least firepower overall.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Next up from there would be the Ronbus.
Mm-hmm. Two together. Did you notice any power differences between the two shapes?
Not really noticeable, no.
Okay.
How about you?
No.
Okay. Next up from there would be the Thrive Project Fury.
Yes, sir.
And I would say, before we move on, I would put the Ronbus and the Franklin kind of closer together at the bottom of our list today. Mm-hmm. And then there's a bit of a jump to get to the Thrive in terms of power output. Mm-hmm. Above that, the Selkirks.
Yeah.
Not such a huge difference between the Selkirks and the Thrive. Mm-hmm. So not the big jump that we saw between number 2 and number 3. And then at the top of my list is the GBP.
Okay, Gearbox GX2
yes.
Power. Okay.
Yeah. That thing is a cannon.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. It's I would say it's elite power.
Yeah. Okay. I like it, Eddie, because my list is almost exactly the same as yours. So on the bottom, I also have the Paris Todd Signature C45 Franklin. Just above that, I'd put both of the Ronbus Refoams, and I did not feel a firepower difference between these two shapes. I've got the Thrive Fury above those, and like you, I did feel a power gap more noticeably between the Ronbus and the Thrive versus the Ronbus and the Franklin below that. They're all closer together near the bottom. I think I'm going to put the Gearbox GX2 next, and the Selkirk Boomstiks, I want to call it a broomstick, the Selkirk Boomstiks above that. However, I could change my mind on that. Now, I hit some competitive games with the prototypes of the Boomstiks when I was in Coeur d'Alene. I did feel like those hit harder than the production models. So that might be influencing my decision to put those at the top, above the Gearbox GX2 Power. I agree with you that it is, I'd call it top tier power. Maybe not right up against the legal limit. If we're calling the legal limit the body helix flick, there's a gap between that and the gearbox, I'd say. But if, let's say, the body helix flick is illegal, and I can't think of another power. I'd put the power level of the Gearbox GX2 at or slightly above a brand new Perseus Pro 4 from Yola. Yeah.
If we were talking about pop, I would agree with you. I think that these are poppier than the Gearbox.
Yeah. I'd put those above.
But putting power into the mix, I'm going to stay with my Gearbox at being at the top.
Remains to be seen for me, but I'd say they're all very close up there at the top. I will say that I feel like I'm getting more power from the elongated shape of the Boomstik than the wide body. I'd say the wide body is definitely more forgiving.
Agree.
Than the elongated, wider sweet spot as you would imagine. But I just wasn't. I feel like the further you go up on the Boomstik, the more leverage you get, and the faster the ball comes off. it seems logical, but it's not always the case with paddles. But I feel like that's very pronounced with the Boomstik.
Seems like we're getting to a place now where we're seeing a lot of control from these power paddles as well. All three of these, the Gearbox, the Thrive, and the Selkirks, are just remarkably easy to work the ball.
Yeah, I
which
agree.
is really nice.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing a paradigm shift, which I think you kind of spearheaded, Eddie. I think you pulled out a question at one point from our viewers, and why are we calling control paddles control? It's more like low power, mid power, high power, and control is kind of all over the place in that spectrum. It's high on some power paddles now and low on some control paddles. So why are we calling that out? I think it's time, Eddie, for a shift in our terminology. But I totally agree that now the elite tier power paddles have as much control as almost any other paddle. Yeah, especially as things get softer. Like the way it was before, the top tier power paddles had small sweet spots and were stiff. And that just kills control. You got to be so precise to hit that quarter size sweet spot. And the stiffness, some people can get by with stiffness and still have good control. I feel like the majority of people need a softer paddle to feel more dialed in with the soft game. So, yeah, I feel like we've turned a page.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in our feel and forgiveness rankings of these paddles.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about that. Let's go, Eddie. Why don't you give us from top to bottom your ranking for feel and forgiveness?
We're going top to bottom this time.
Oh, sorry. Bottom to top.
Okay.
Let's keep it the same.
We're going to put the Franklin at the bottom again. And by no means not the bottom of all paddles, but in our very elite ranking today, trails to pack.
Mm-hmm.
Above that would be the Ronbus again.
Okay.
Forgiveness is, for me, it was about the sweet spot of these, particularly with the elongated version. I felt like some perimeter weight could help, but as a stock paddle, when you try and put this up against some of the more elite contenders in terms of feel and forgiveness that we're going to talk about, it's just a notch down.
Okay.
Next in line for me is the Selkirks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to put the Thrive and the Gearbox tied.
Oh, really?
At the top of my list.
Dang. Big props for the Thrive. And because we all know Eddie loves the Gearbox already. All right. Mine's almost the same. So I've got the Franklin Paris Todd at the bottom. And again, caveat there is still a great feeling paddle, just at the bottom of our very elite tier list right now. I'd put the Ronbus Refoam slightly above that in terms of feel. Then I had the Thrive Fury, and similar to how there's a power gap in between the Thrive Fury and the Ronbus, there's also a pretty big gap in terms of control and forgiveness. So I'd say there's a significant jump from the Ronbus to the Thrive. I'd say that the Thrive, I'd call it a tie with the elongated Boomstik, and then I'd put the wide body Boomstik above that, and then top of the pack for feel and forgiveness, I've got the Gearbox GX2 Power.
All by itself.
All by itself. Class of its own.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're loving that paddle.
Man, I love that thing. It is a strong contender for my new main. Yeah.
Potentially paddle of the year.
Potentially. We'll see.
I mean, the way this year's going.
If our exponential quality curve, performance curve of paddles keeps going, trending in this direction.
Exponential and not logarithmic?
I think it's logarithmic. I think it's going to level out. Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Rarely do we agree on so much and are aligned with our opinions so much on these types of things, but we're very close here.
Must mean something good.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to put the paddles back, and then we'll move on to deep dive. Eddie, let's put on the scuba gear.
Scuba gear. Got it.
Let's dive a little deep here. And I'm not going to get super deep into this topic, but I feel like it needs addressing. And we talked about it a little bit here and there, but we never really devoted an entire segment to what does adding weight do to a paddle's firepower. Now, we know that adding weight enhances many aspects of a paddle, mostly in terms of its feel, and broadens the sweet spot and removes some of the twisting that kills balls on off-center shots. So this is by no means, don't put weight on your paddle, or weight isn't good for your paddle, because it is, So what I wanted to test was how much does it actually increase firepower? Because the impression is the more weight you put on your paddle, the more firepower you get, or more powerful it becomes. But it's very complicated. And what we've seen is some paddles do get more powerful, some paddles stay the same, others actually decrease in firepower a little bit. And one thing I do like about lead tape, tungsten tape on a paddle is if I feel like the paddle's too poppy or a little too stiff, sometimes those do go together, stiffness and poppiness, putting tungsten tape, perimeter tape on the paddle tends to bring down that level of pop and make it feel a little more forgiving, both in terms of sweet spot as well as that it brings down that stiffness factor. So I've noticed there's a kind of a decrease in pop in general for paddles with weight, but overall firepower is really tricky to talk about. But let me give you some Kew numbers for specific paddles, so we can show kind of the variability which takes place over different paddles. So first, let's look at the Paris Todd. So this Franklin C45 Paris Todd that we just talked about. Before adding any weight, so stock, that Kew was at 0.386, which puts it right in the boundary of all court and power. After, it was 0.371. So a 4% drop after adding the tungsten tape, which surprised me because the opposite happened for the Franklin C45 hybrid shape. That was one where the power increased. So I have those numbers too. Now these numbers are going to be very different in terms of the overall numbers between paddles because I'm drawing from my old Kew using the Franklin holeless ball on the hybrid shape here. So before, it doesn't matter, we'll look at the differential to get the increase and decrease. So the Franklin C45 hybrid stock was 0.479, and it increased after adding perimeter weighting to 0.506. Now that is a 6% increase versus the 4% drop we saw, which...
Can I ask you a question about your methodology?
Yeah.
Did you compare the max PB core at different locations on the paddle face for each of the different weights?
Yes. So where the ball is striking the paddle or where the weight is placed on the paddle?
When you talk about the PB core numbers that you're talking about,
right,
are they in the same location or in the max PB core location for that weight setup? So
we searched both, so before and after adding weight, we searched along the face of the paddle where that performance, and then took the measurement from there. Gotcha. That's a really good observation because that can change, and it does change when you add weight because it drops those vibration nodes and pulls down the sweet spot and that sort of thing. Okay. But what I didn't control for is the location of the tape. More or less it's the same, but for the C45, I went much higher on the face. So that could be playing into it. That's the next frontier in experimenting with the effects of perimeter weighting on power is, does it make a difference if you put it at the top versus along the throat or on the sides, or a mixture thereof. So all very preliminary. So let's talk about the Carbon True Foam Genesis 4, where the original stock paddle got a Kew using my new lifetime ball of 0.399. So a little higher up in the power category, but still on the lower end of the power category. And I added some perimeter weighting. I put it right at 9 3 along the lateral edges of the paddle. Quite a bit. I think it was like close to a full ounce of weight. No, it wasn't that much. It was, so it was more like 10 to 12 grams, right?
Half ounce, not close.
Half ounce, okay. Anyway, it went from 0.399 to 0.391. So slight 2% decrease. And that makes sense to me because what I was noticing with the True Foam Genesis 4 is it was poppier than I liked, which some people love the pop. To me, I wanted a little bit more balance in the power and pop spectrum. And adding that perimeter weighting did just that. And I feel like, the overall firepower may have dropped just a little bit, but it definitely balanced the power and pop to my liking a little more than stock. Okay, and then we've got what we talked about last week or week before, which was my friend Keith, the engineer who's helping me with PB Core, did an experiment with slice caps and found that PB core testing before and after using a slice cap affected different paddles differently. So on the 6.0 Ruby, it decreased its power, and on the Friday original paddle, the power stayed the same before and after the slice cap. So what we're getting here is all kinds of stuff going on, different results for different paddles when you add weight. So you can't say this blanket statement that adding perimeter weighting to a paddle increases its overall firepower, because it does not seem to be the case. And I think, from our court experience, I would say the same thing. I just mentioned my experience with the Carbon TrueFoam Genesis 4. I do feel like the firepower is a little more muted after adding weight versus others like the Franklin C45 Hybrid definitely increases in firepower when you add weight. Do you feel the same? Do you notice differences among paddles?
I almost universally feel like the paddles become a little plusher with weight, a little bit more that feeling of dwell.
But what about firepower overall?
I can't really say that I notice a difference.
Okay. Yeah, I do. So one cool thing about the PB Core formula is that it accounts for swing weight. And if you hold every other variable constant and you increase swing weight, the PB Core formula drops slightly as the swing weight goes up. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is it's calculating that you can't swing a paddle as quickly if it's harder to swing, right? You're not going to get the same.
And that's why it's difficult for me to really make a judgment about that, because while I may be imparting more force into the ball, I'm also moving slower. Yeah. So it almost feels like they're canceling each other out.
True. And what I've noticed with adding weight is yes, if you can wind up and just do a full swing, a tennis stroke, get a serve going, the more weight, the more power you get, for sure, because you got more time to swing to get to the maximum velocity of the paddle head speed with the full swing. But pickleball, we're not using those swings hardly ever, right? Overhead putaways, serves, if you have time for a big windup for a drive, but even for drives, you rarely do you get the time to do a full backswing, and it's not even recommended. It's not the best method in pickleball. Pickleball is all about short backswings, quick little, it doesn't have to be flicks with your wrist, but quick little shoulder movements, some elbow involvement, and some wrist as well. So that's going to be a lot in the pop range, and swing weight has a profound effect on those movements. And the higher you go up in swing weight, the less quickly you're going to be able to move your paddle from 0 to max speed, right? So, yeah, I feel like the PB Core formula corrects for that, but paddles behave differently, even given that. And I think where the starting point of the paddle is in terms of its swing weight has an effect on this as well. If it's a super low swing weight, you've got a lot more room to add more weight without hindering your hand speed so much. So that's, mitigating some of the effects of slowing down the paddle. But I think construction of the paddle also plays a role.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Foam versus honeycomb?
Yeah. What I was really hoping to find was that the Paris Todd paddle behaved the same as the C45 Hybrid, but it doesn't. So that's still a mystery. Yeah. But, I love it when things don't necessarily line up with our expectations, because it gives us more questions to ask and experiment on. But yeah, like I said, not a huge deep dive. We're leaving with more questions than we entered with, but definitely we can't say that adding weight universally increases power to a paddle. Let's move on to Q&A, Eddie.
Yeah, first one here from Ron is, and this is a good one. What's your opinion on people who choke up on the grip for shots? Sometimes here, or maybe with a finger up like that. Yeah. And particularly on elongated paddles. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on people that don't use this real estate here, but favoring the more, vertical?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've got thoughts, and I'm not going to come from this from you shouldn't do this or should do that for performance reasons outside of the paddle realm. But looking at paddles, I can't speak to what it does when you choke up on a grip in terms of the paddle performance. And every movement up or down the paddle handle with your hand increases or decreases the swing weight in a massive, significant way. So if you're using the Callum Dawson ping pong grip like you're holding now, that drops. I think we calculated it. Me and Brian Fitzpatrick, owner of Graffiti, calculated what Callum Dawson's swing weight was holding the original Pro Kinetics Black Ace elongated with that grip, and
it's probably 10 points.
No, it was more.
Really?
It was like 60 was the swing weight. It went down from 100, halved it. It went down well below 100. So that decreases the swing weight. Does that mean that everybody should be choking up on that paddle that much? No, because there's a lot of trade-offs with that. You don't get nearly as much leverage, so it's really hard to put balls away. Callum is a very strong athlete, and he's still able to get a lot of pace on the ball. Most of us, if we choked up that way, the ball is just pitter-pattering off the paddle. We can't get any velocity on the ball. And also, it depends on where you like to hit the ball. How many inches from your fulcrum, where your hand is holding the paddle, are you mapped onto? And if that is significantly decreased with a grip like that, it's going to take forever for you to adjust if you're not adjusted already to that. So that's my paddle nerd specific angle on where you hold the paddle. But I also think that I love it that we don't really have pickleball in terms of technique and performance and all that is the Wild West compared to tennis. I like that aspect of pickleball, that it doesn't matter where you grip the paddle. It's what feels best for you, and nobody really is an authority on that. Versus tennis, where there's specific entrenched ways to hold the tennis racket, and if you're doing it wrong, it's you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
I will say intuitively, it feels like a waste to purchase an elongated paddle for the sake of a longer lever, and then to waste a good bit of that lever with unusable real estate.
Yeah.
Why?
I think Callum Dawson mentioned that he actually likes the handle to stick down below his hand a good amount. I forget exactly why. But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you just like chop off half the handle?
Right.
Or play with, remember those hideous super long blade paddles with the stubby little handle? Like,
yes.
If you have a ping pong grip, that seems like it would be the perfect paddle.
Like a 3-inch grip.
Uh-huh.
You talk a little bit about why we measure the swing weight the way we do.
Yeah, so our swing weight measurements are using, to standardize it, we're using a fulcrum at 5 centimeters from the base of the handle, 2 inches up, a little bit higher. So that's basically, it's a way to standardize it among all paddle reviewers and everybody measuring the swing weight. And it's also on average where people hold the paddle, right? And that's also where we clamp the paddle for PB core. That's the same spot.
So there are some that would measure swing weight at 0, but we don't do that.
No, some people do. I think Wilson makes a swing weight machine that captures it from 0. And clearly the swing weight's going to give you much higher numbers. And you could correlate them, but at this point it's so well established, that this 5 centimeter norm, that anything outside of that is just, it's kind of silly to do that. Why? Why would we want to change the course of things right now?
Yeah.
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Good. A question from Kyle Pickleball. John, you were a big fan of the Gearbox Pro Ultimate Hyper based on your review. How would the GX2 Power stack up in power and pop? Guessing more of each, but is it a big jump?
Yeah. First, thanks, Kyle, and I'll address the specific question first. Firepower, I'd say definitely a jump from the Ultimate Hyper. Ultimate Hyper had a good amount of firepower. I'd call it like in the power category on the low end, going up to the middle. I'd call the GX2 Power middle, going up to the top, closer to the top. But expanding that to paddles overall, yes, I did love the Hyper shape, and at the time I said that was definitely Gearbox's best paddle, and it wasn't even close at the time, and I stand by that. However, if you compared that to other paddles, and I did in my review, it wasn't top of the top of the top. And I think it was a big improvement for Gearbox, but in the current landscape at the time, last year, it was a good paddle, but probably not the best of the best, you know what I mean? There was room for improvement. For the GX2 Power, I feel like they've done everything right. And for Gearbox, it's their technology, their SST technology is in many ways so superior to what we're seeing in every other paddle out there right now, because we know that polypropylene honeycomb breaks down and interfaces with the foam or the weak points of the paddle, and they don't behave the same. the potential for the SST using carbon fiber ribs with foam in the inside and all of the manipulations that Rafa can do with that in terms of the tensile strength of the carbon fiber, the density of the carbon fiber, all these things he's able to manipulate so well. Everything came together in the GX2 Power. There's an edge guard on it too. He brought back some feel, a little bit more sound to the paddle versus the original GX2. Suffice it to say that I feel like this is not only Gearbox's best paddle to date, and again, it's not even close, but it also is, if not the best, one of the best contenders for any paddle out there today in terms of feel, size of the sweet spot. If you like a power paddle and you want a lot of power, you get it. You also get plenty of forgiveness, controllable power. The overall feel of the ball coming out the face is fantastic. The sound is good. The spin is really good. I think I got like 2200 high in the 2200 mark, which is like 80th something percentile for one of the GX2 Powers. I think it was the hybrid. The other was close. So all these things are coming together to just make an excellent paddle. The only thing, if I had to ask for one thing from this paddle to improve, it would probably be maybe a little bit more aggressive grit. Like, why not push it into the absolute elite tier RPM? It already is super, super high, but also grit, texture, spin, durability, maybe going the route of like Selkirk and coming up with, and again, it's as yet unproven, but it looks promising that the InfiniGrit is more durable than a raw carbon fiber. So
have you heard from Rafa why grit seems to be like not a Gearbox thing?
Yeah.
Over the course of like their entire history, they've never had really a paddle that I can think of that was like, oh man, that thing's crazy gritty.
Yeah. I think he's playing by the rules, and that's what USAP allows in terms of their stare-at machine RZ scores, and I think this maxes out, this GX2 Power maxes out the RZ, and he didn't want to quite get it that close before, but this is maxing it out, and all the other paddles we feel like, you can file your nails on them. I'm not saying this is intentional on the paddle companies, but they're definitely over the legal limit.
One thing about this GX2 Power over the Pro Ultimate that you mentioned is just the accessibility of that power. The sweet spot is very generous, and that just gives you a lot of real estate to work with to hit those drives, hit really every shot in your arsenal very consistently and predictably. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the Pro Ultimate, sometimes you were taking your chances in terms of the hitting of the sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Pro Ultimates were heavy, The Hyper wasn't as heavy. I think it came in like a 116 swing weight stock. But yeah, the sweet spots were a little smaller. You're totally right, though. Like the GX2 Power, the sweet spot is night and day between any previous iteration. Sort of the GX2, that was a pretty good sweet spot too. But regardless, everything comes together. What are your thoughts? How would you answer that question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the power is definitely increased, and we can drone on and on about how accessible that power is, but that's really the key, right? Is you can make the world's most powerful paddle, but if you can't get to that power, if it's unpredictable, it's useless. Yeah. But with the GX2, it's just there.
Yep. 100%.
And I love it. Another GX2 question, and then we'll move off of Gearbox.
Okay, let's do it.
John, TX1, asks about the handle length for a TUI on the GX2. Mm-hmm. He tried the standard length J2 FC Plus, and it was just too short, and that handle is a bit short. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the length of the GX2 Power? I don't have any recollection either way about its length, and I do use a two-handed backhand.
Yeah, I use a two-handed backhand, and you get about 0.2 more of an inch of handle on the GX2 Power versus the J2 shape, the standard J2 shape. Now, they are coming out with a long handle J2 shape, which I haven't received yet, but so we're talking like a 5.3-inch handle, or maybe even 5.25 on the J2 shape versus a 5.5-inch handle on the GX2 Power. So, I have no issues with TUIs on the Gearbox.
Same.
Okay.
One more question. This one from Bazooki, 1979. I like that. Occasionally, we bring up the term launch angle. Can you explain this, and how does one determine launch angle for a paddle and how to deal with it?
Yeah. And we're hearing more and more about launch angle. And I think I'd I want to credit Braden with coming up with this term and kind of being the first to explore it. He's a leader in a lot of things. He brought in twist weight into our vernacular and figured out its correlation with sweet spot also. But basically, launch angle is when you're swinging, and usually you're brushing up to get top spin with a paddle. A high launch angle is going to launch the ball higher over the net, and a low launch angle is going to launch it lower down into the net, right? And what we think it correlates with is dwell time and grit to an extent, So the stickier the paddle face and the more the ball dwells on the paddle face, the higher the launch angle, and the more slip you get with less gritty paddles or stiffer paddles where the ball doesn't stay on as long. The ball's going to skip off and go to a lower angle. And somebody in Discord mentioned, like, John, can you use your ball cannon to give us standardized measurements and give us objective, launch angles? And I would love to. And it's totally doable too. It would be the similar methodology that PPL, Pro Pickle Labs, does to measure spin directly. And they shoot a paddle with the ball cannon. I think it's a 40-mile-an-hour inbound, but the paddle is angled at 30 degrees. It hits the sweet spot. They have a high-speed camera that measures each frame and the rotation of that ball, and they get up, 2,200 RPM is their limit for paddle spin. What you could also do is, put a protractor in the background of that and have a high-speed camera, and other things being equal, you're going to get some paddles that grip the ball and you get more dwell, and that ball is going to have a higher angle of exit velocity versus a ball that slips further is going to have a lower angle. So all in all, I'd say that for me, a higher launch angle is a little better because it indicates that you're getting more dwell and better spin. And you can always adapt, but what you don't want is a paddle that varies in its launch angle. So sometimes you get a high launch angle, other times you get a low because it's slipping and certain times and not at others. Is that your impression too, Eddie?
That makes total sense. I'd love to see some of your experiments that align to that. Obviously, different swing speeds, different inbound ball speeds are going to change that launch angle, as you said. There are certainly paddles out there that seem pretty extreme in terms of the expectation versus the reality of the ball coming off the face. But as we talked about today with the Thrive, so easy with other paddles. Yeah. Very intuitive. Ball goes exactly, and I'm not talking about left to right on the court. I'm talking about up and down relative to clearance of the net. It seems so easy. So there is something there. There's definitely differences in paddle. I'd love to see this quantified.
Yeah. Well, all I need now is $50,000 to get a 20,000 frame per second high-speed camera.
I know a guy.
Okay. Next time. Coming up next. All right, Eddie, any more cues?
Great episode. Let's do some more paddles next week.
Sounds good.
All right, John.
Thanks.